So, the translations are out for My Hero Academia, manga chapter 330, and let's just say, yeah, this was an action-packed chapter with major reveals, major conclusions, and a major, change for the story. For better or for worse, well, we're going to have to decide that in this review, right after this intro. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Drew, and I'm here to do my review for My Hero Academia, manga chapter 330, titled Me and Myself, and unfortunately, I'm not there. But yes, when it comes to this chapter of My Hero Academia, we are going to continue from what we saw last chapter with the fight between Shigaraki and Star and Stripe. And there's a reason why I'm specifically saying Shigaraki, and you'll understand a little bit later. But yes, in this chapter, we get a lot of reveals. We get to see a lot of action between Shigaraki and Star and Stripe. We even get the reveal of Star and Stripe when it comes to her quirk and her backstory. And let me just say, spoilers, it's broken as shit. As well as we get some new information about what Shigaraki is going on inside of him with All For One, as well as Tomoe Shigaraki, and what that could imply with the 3 days, what has actually happened. Well, I don't know. You're just gonna have to watch this review to find out. And before we get more into the review, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't done so, to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I do reviews, discussions, and spoilers for My Hero Academia, so if that's the type of content that you're looking for, you're at the right place. So why don't you subscribe to my YouTube channel? And with that out the way, let's get right into the review. So, before we actually start off the review, I like to say that apparently My Hero Academia has the cover for Shonen Jump, and it just looks amazing. We're entering the final act, the final arc, however you want to pull it. And when it comes to this page, it pretty much sums up what My Hero Academia is. The dichotomy of what makes a hero, as we see both Deku and Shigaraki, two sides of the same coins, having their hands extended, which I like this type of motif of because hands play a really important role in the story if you haven't really noticed or been paying attention. So it's just very cool to see that, and how they're pretty much flipped of each other, which kind of in the story it makes sense. So it just looks very aesthetically pleasing, as well as the dichotomy between the green and the red, go and stop. I just really enjoyed this coloring, and oh man, I need to download this when it actually comes out, like I do all of the other ones. So yeah, this is a very cool cover, and I can't wait to have it. So now, going from the cover, let's go into the chapter where we directly continue off from where we last left off. As we saw Star and Stripe questioning who this person in front of her is, you have the pilot say, this is definitely Shigaraki. This isn't All For One. Should we go in for the attack? As we have Star and Stripe's like, yeah, let's go smash him, as they get into formation, heading in the direction of Shigaraki, as they're trying to understand, what do we need to do right now? As she's like, oh, all we have to do is take this guy down. It's time to attack this villain. But we get a little bit more characterization for Star and Stripe, as you have this one pilot's like, yeah, hopefully we can just have one of these planes go back, because he has no faith that any of them are going to return alive. As you just have Star and Stripe's like, don't worry, I'll return your bodies to your families, showing that, yeah, she isn't as optimistic in the idea of oh yeah, we're all gonna go back, we're all gonna be safe. But she also realizes that she's going up against a villain, and that there is potential that they will all die, but that she's going to try her best to make sure that at least the bodies are delivered back to the family so that they can have some form of closure. So it's very cool to see a little bit more characterization for Star and Stripe, and we do get a little bit more of that in the chapter moving forward. So yes, though we get more characterization from Star and Stripe, we actually also get more characterization for Shigaraki. Or is it? Because we do have Shigaraki, and this is probably something that's going to be lost in translation because of how Japanese language is structured, where you have Shigaraki who's questioning whether or not he's Tomoe Shigaraki, but then you also get another line of him saying that he also feels like himself, in reference to him being All For One. So this is something that is lost, because apparently from what we see with a small translation note for these fan translations, is that when he comes to All For One speaks using Boku, while Shigaraki speaks about himself using Ore. So unfortunately, this is something that's going to be lost in translation because we don't really have different like uses for and I for one person versus another person in the English language. But this kind of shows that this Shigaraki doesn't really know if he's Tomura or if he's All For One, and he tries to question this, but he can't really go really in depth into it because, you know, he's going up against the superhero. So we get a little bit more of how Shigaraki is going to be able to use All For One in these different quirks inside of him, as he uses Radio Wave plus Push plus Load Up to try and deliver an attack. And it kind of just looks like a big burst off, like Kamehameha like attack, to which the pilots are luckily enough to evade, mainly because they're flying jets, as well as they do have force field. So pretty much what Shigaraki just fired off was probably a big destructive EMP, but luckily enough they have force fields and were able to avoid the attack, so no damage was delivered to the people. But we do get to see a moment of Star and Stripe jumping off of one ship and immediately landing on another to make sure she avoids the attack. And then once again, we get a little bit more characterization from Star and Stripe, as we also get the reveal of her quirk about how when it comes to fighting a villain like this, that they don't really need a plan, and that when it comes to like being the strongest hero is being able to jump in and defeat the enemy without a really logical plan, as you have her saying that the atmosphere from here, as we get the reveal of Star and Stripe's quirk, which is New Order, because as she calls out atmosphere, she says that to 100 meters in front of her will cease to exist, as we get this double page of a big star forming around Shigaraki that apparently has taken away the atmosphere, as we see that he's gasping for air, his eyes begin to bleed, as you have Star and Stripe saying that something like this is not going to finish him off, as they begin to fire lasers at him, as we get the reveal of what her quirk does, which is after she touches a target and calls out their name, she's able to freely impose a new rule over it. This goes against my idea of what her quirk would be. This seems to be a very broken quirk, and we do get some restrictions on it, which is great, but pretty much if she's able to touch anything, and we're gonna see a little bit more, it's literally anything. We see that she's able to literally touch the atmosphere, something that isn't like really tangible. Like technically I'm touching the air now, but I can't hold it, but like her just touching the air, and in this case the atmosphere, she's able to impose a new rule on it. That's a broken ability. I didn't think it was going to be this broken, but hey, it's a quirk that All For One says that, hey, if we have someone, but it's a quirk that All For One's like, yeah, if we have to go up against this quirk, we're gonna have a hard time. At the end of the chapter, we kind of see like why he really wants this quirk and why it's very detrimental to his plan, whatever it may be. But yeah, Star and Stripe, New Order, very broken quirk, and it's no wonder he wants it. So yeah, after that laser barrage, these pilots get a little bit cocky, thinking that, oh, yep, we already took out Shigaraki, no need to worry. While you have Star and Stripe's like, oh no, it's not over, as we get to see Shigaraki, who's apparently holding the lasers in his hands, takes the attack and uses two new quirks, Reflection and Refraction, and sends the lasers flying back at the ships, as one of them hits Star and Stripe. But if you look very closely at the panel, you see she calls out laser, and then immediately in the next panel, we see her literally holding a laser in her hand saying, I can hold lasers. As while she's saying this, the big star-shaped area around Shigaraki disappears, and Shigaraki notices it, and he thinks that, oh, there must be a limit to New Order, and she's like, oh well, he rockets towards Star and Stripe. And as he's doing this, you have Star and Stripe like, oh wow, a very cool like aerial maneuver. Yeah, you just fell into my trap, as in the next page we get another double page spread, which includes literally Star and Stripe without her mask, punching Tomura Shigaraki, calling out his name, as from this page, we actually get a little bit more about Star and Stripe and her quirk. We get a little bit more about her backstory, which is that a long time ago in Santa Monica, she was attacked by a villain. All For One showed up, and because of that, he became her spiritual master, which is confirmation that All For One didn't take her up as a master. It is what a lot of people thought. She just viewed him as her master based off her experience. She says this is her spiritual master, and how he inspired her to be the hero that she is right now. And what we learn more about her quirk is that she can only impose 2 restrictions at a time, and one of them is always constantly active on herself, which gives her super strength. Which is interesting to see because it was weird that she was able to have super strength if she had a broken ability, but because of that, she can have her broken ability and not be too broken, where she has super strength, but she says that it's not on the same level as All Might, which kind of explains why she never became like the #1 hero over the world, because All Might just had superior strength more than anyone else. But also the fact that she has restrictions on her quirk, meaning that if she didn't have super strength, she could impose 2 different abilities on Shigaraki at this moment, but it's not advantageous to do so because even though she may have the ability to impose 2 new rules, if she's unable to take the villain down with her own power, then what's the point? Because in this chapter, there are ways to get around it, and we'll get why it's a little bit buggy in this chapter. So yeah, we get to learn a little bit more about Star and Stripe, as well as the restrictions on her quirks in this chapter. And now we're actually approaching the end of this chapter, as we have Star and Stripe pinning Shigaraki to the back of a plane, as she also announces that the reasoning why she has the 8 long strands is inspired by All Might, and you just have Shigaraki's like, oh gosh, why do I have to constantly hear about All Might? I hear about him in Japan, I hear about him all over the world. Why can't people just shut up about him? As you just have Star and Stripe just sitting there, just looking actually very beautiful. Like, without her mask, she actually looks very beautiful, as she tells Shigaraki, it's like, yeah, that's why he's the symbol of peace. Oh, by the way, if you haven't noticed, I already touched you and I already called out your name. And we just have her saying, by the way, if Shigaraki Tomura were to move an inch, his heart will stop. And here's where we get the broken ability. And here's where I want to explain something about how the panels are used, or specifically the dialogue is used when she's using her quirk. I think it's very interesting, and I'm not sure if this is a specifically Hirokoshi thing that he did or something related to how it was translated by the fan translations, but we get to see that every time she uses her quirk, whatever she says has the backgrounds of stripes in the background, indicating most likely the American flag of red and white. So that's very cool aesthetically, but yeah, we get to see the limits of how broken her ability is. It's like, oh, by the way, I touched you, I know your name, so you know, if you ever, I don't know, decide to move, I'll just kill you right here and now. So yeah, it shows an interesting mechanic to her quirk and how she literally has to know the name of the person before she's able to impose a rule on it, which means that in reality, if she can go up against like big bad villains, because obviously she would know the name of the big bad villains, but she wouldn't know the names of like common people. So that's why she always imposes super strength on her, because if she's unable to impose a rule on them because she doesn't know their name, then she can't really do anything about them. She can only like affect the area around them, but if they have a way to get around that, or if she's able to take the atmosphere away and they have a quirk to get out of that vicinity instantly, then it's not as useful, which is why most likely she uses super strength on herself to be able to finish them off in one blow if she can't really do it with her overpowered quirk. So yeah, it kind of shows a little bit more balance to it than you could probably think if you look a little bit more into it, which is very cool. So yeah, Tomura is in a little pickle, or should I say Shigaraki, and the reason why I've only been saying Shigaraki is because with the next few pages, we get a better understanding of what's been going on with Shigaraki's body. You have Shigaraki coming to this realization that, I'm caught. By the way, there's been something that I've been noticing this entire time as we get this one page, or this one panel of All For One pretty much consuming all of Shigaraki, but to be more precise, they're becoming one, because you just have All For One saying that, oh man, this thing that's going on right now, it usually would have taken like 2 months, but wow, you really hate me. Like, this is like unprecedented. Like, your hatred is so strong that we're literally going to become one entity in a few days. What? Yeah, All For One's main goal from what we're getting from Shigaraki is that because of Shigaraki's hatred, not just for society, not just for All Might, but even for him himself, it is forcing All For One and Tomura to become one. They're merging together, and from what we're hearing from All For One, it's not going to be like, oh, All For One is taking over Shigaraki. No, All For One and Tomura Shigaraki are becoming one, as you have this realization of Shigaraki still being able to move and his heart not. As you have Shigaraki still being able to move outside of the Vestige world, as you have Star and Stripe realizing like, wait 1 second, this shouldn't be happening. Is this person not Tomura Shigaraki? Which is why I've been calling him Shigaraki the entire time, because he's going to be a new individual. He's not going to be just All For One. He's not just going to be Tomura Shigaraki. We have to remember, Shigaraki was the original name technically of All For One. So I think it's probably best to just start referring to him as Shigaraki, because that's going to be who he is, a combination of All For One and Tomura. Shigaraki. They're going to give birth to a brand new individual, as they say. Then we approach the end of the chapter where we just have this one panel of Tomura Shigaraki, Shigaraki's white hair bursting out, showing that, yeah, he's been growing out his hair the entire time, and it looks fabulous. As we get the last line of the chapter, it all began at home. Slowly, his hatred accumulated, as we get this small burst of light and electricity flying everywhere as the chapter ends, and we're going to be on break next week. So, the fight is ended. We don't know what happened, but if I were to put my money on anything, I do not think that Star and Stripe is dead. I do not think that Tomura Shigaraki is dead. I think a lot of the pilots are dead, except for one, which is carrying the body of Star and Stripe away to Japan, where she's going to be incapacitated for a long amount of time. And this ties into a theory that I brought up in the last chapter, or kind of discussed, and I think that is building to that point. So yeah, what did I think of this chapter? Oh my gosh, this was great. We didn't get a lot about Star and Stripe when it comes to her character, but we didn't need a whole lot. We got a little bit more characterization, we got her motives, her reasoning for being a hero, which all stems from All Might, go figure, as well as we got a little bit more understanding of how her quirk works, certain restrictions to her quirk, and we could probably talk a little bit more about what she can and can't do, because frankly, going from removing the atmosphere from a certain area to literally causing instant death to a person, those are very two different extremes. But we can also see that potential restrictions because she has to call out a name. So it's very interesting to see how broken this ability is, while it's still somewhat fairly balanced, which also explains why All For One would want this type of quirk, because if he has a quirk that, oh, as long as I know this person's name, I can impose a new rule on it. Oh, how useful would that quirk be in taking, I don't know, a quirk that he cannot steal and make it so that it can be stolen? I wonder what he would want to use that quirk on. So yeah, it makes sense for why he wants this quirk, and as we've seen, if she gets defeated in this moment, it shows that, yeah, this quirk isn't like overpowered where no one can beat it, because if he beats her, it shows that it isn't invincible, showing that even if she becomes incapacitated and they're unable to steal the quirk, which potentially they could have, it won't really hinder the heroes as much as we think, because we already know some restrictions on it, so we can think of ways that the heroes can get around it. So yeah, that was very interesting. Also getting the revelation that Shigaraki, Tomura, and All For One are becoming one entity, which is kind of different. What people have been assuming that All For One would just be taking over Shigaraki's body. No, they're becoming one particular entity, and that entity may have more influence by All For One, but I do have an idea that this may not be a permanent fusion, and that the only thing that keeping them together is Shigaraki's hatred. So this could tie into the end of the series, where All For One gets defeated, not necessarily because Deku beats the heck out of Shigaraki, but literally and figuratively beats the hatred out of him, which causes them to defuse and causes All For One to disappear. So yeah, all in all, really enjoyed this chapter. A lot of characterization from Star and Stripe, the reveal of what her quirk is and its restrictions, as well as getting a better understanding of what's going on inside of Shigaraki's mind when it comes to the battle between All For One and Tomura. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about this chapter. I thought this was a really good chapter, but hey, what did you think? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Do you think that this fight was too short, or do you think that it could have went on longer? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below, leave a like on this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be notified for whenever I upload more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to see you in my next video. Goodbye!